Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin by saying this. You were never meant to be a victim of emotional schemes, psychological warfare, or manipulative love. You were born with a purpose, and anything that seeks to control your mind, your identity, or your destiny is not from your Creator. It is a counterfeit. Too many people are falling prey to charm without character, to love without truth, and to attention without intention. What we're going to deal with today is not just protection from toxic people, but a transformation of perspective so that no game, no scheme, no counterfeit relationship can ever trap you again. The first and most crucial step in protecting yourself from narcissistic manipulation is knowing your identity. Identity is not something that can be given to you by anyone else. It is something you must discover for yourself. Too many people fall into the trap set by narcissists because they don't understand who they truly are. They allow others to define their value, their worth, and their purpose. When you don't know who you are easily manipulated because you are constantly looking outside yourself for validation, for approval, and for affirmation. You will begin to rely on the opinions of others, and that is the very thing that opens the door to exploitation. To be free from narcissistic games, you must first establish your identity firmly within yourself. Your identity is the foundation of everything that you do. It is the root of your thoughts, your actions, your choices, and your interactions with others. It is impossible to build a strong, healthy relationship with anyone until you have a solid sense of self. Without this self-awareness, you will find yourself entangled in toxic dynamics because you will be constantly shifting, adjusting, and contorting yourself to fit what others want you to be. When you know who you are not moved by compliments that flatter you or criticisms that try to tear you down. You are grounded in something far deeper. Knowing your identity means you understand your worth beyond external measures. It means that you do not seek approval from others to validate your existence because you already know your value. Narcissists thrive on your insecurity, your need for their validation, and your hunger for their attention. But when you understand who you are, you can no longer be swayed by their attempts to control you. Your identity comes from within, not from the approval or recognition of those around you. Society, friends, family, and even colleagues will try to define you, but you must reject the labels that others place on you. The world will tell you who you should be, but your true identity is revealed in your purpose and your values. It is revealed in the way you carry yourself, in your actions, and in your ability to stand firm in the face of adversity. It is the confidence that comes from knowing you are not here to please people, but to fulfill a divine assignment. When you don't know your identity, you leave room for others to control the narrative of your life. Narcissists are experts at creating false narratives that serve their agendas. They will try to distort the truth, manipulate your emotions, and make you question your perception of reality. But when you know who you are, you don't have to question yourself. You don't have to doubt your worth. Narcissists often use gaslighting and psychological manipulation to make you feel like you are the problem, like you are losing touch with reality. However, when you are anchored in your identity, you can recognize these tactics for what they are. Manipulation designed to keep you in a state of confusion and dependency. Your identity is built on your values, your experiences, and your convictions. It is not a product of circumstances or the judgments of others. The strength of your identity comes from understanding that you are more than your past mistakes, more than the opinions of those around you, and more than the labels that society tries to place on you. You are an individual, and your worth is intrinsic, not determined by external forces. This clarity allows you to walk with confidence, to make decisions that align with your true self, and to set boundaries that protect your peace. When you are secure in your identity, narcissists no longer have any leverage over you. They can no longer manipulate your emotions, control your decisions, or make you feel guilty for not conforming to their desires. You will be able to recognize their tactics because they will no longer trigger the responses that they are hoping for. You will not feel compelled to appease them, to seek their approval, or to tolerate their toxic behavior. Establishing your identity means you can confidently say no when necessary, because your sense of self is not dependent on the approval of others. You don't need to be validated by people who seek to use you for their own benefit. You don't need to be in a relationship with someone who only values you based on what they can extract from you. Knowing your identity empowers you to walk away from unhealthy situations and relationships without guilt or fear. True freedom comes when you recognize that your identity is unshakable. It is rooted in your understanding of who you are, why you are here, and the purpose you are meant to fulfill. You stop being defined by the opinions of others and start defining yourself by the values and principles that guide your life. When you walk in the fullness of your identity, no narcissist, no manipulative individual can distort or confuse your sense of self. You are strong, you are clear, and you are unshaken. This is how you begin to break free from the control that narcissistic individuals seek to impose on you. The foundation of your strength lies in knowing exactly who you are. To set healthy boundaries in your life, it is crucial to first understand that boundaries are not walls meant to shut people out, but rather gates that protect your most sacred self. They are guidelines you set to ensure that your emotional, mental, and physical well-being is respected by others. Setting boundaries is an act of self-respect and an assertion of your value. Without clear boundaries, you risk allowing others to define you, manipulate you, and even control you without realizing it. Many of us have experienced what it's like to be in a relationship or interaction where our boundaries were either ignored or not even acknowledged. We end up feeling drained, confused, and sometimes even angry because we gave too much without receiving the same respect in return. Narcissists in particular thrive on the absence of boundaries. They test limits, pushing further and further until they find a way to exploit your vulnerabilities. But when you establish strong, non-negotiable boundaries, you take away their power. The first step in setting these boundaries is to understand your own values. What do you stand for? What are the core principles you believe in? If you don't know what you value, it's impossible to protect it. For example, if you value honesty, you need to set a boundary against any form of dishonesty. If you value respect, you need to protect yourself from behaviors that seek to belittle or degrade you. The key to protecting your values is recognizing that your worth is not dependent on how others see you, but on what you know to be true about yourself. When you have a clear understanding of your values, you become less susceptible to manipulation because you're no longer influenced by what others might try to impose on you. Once you've identified your values, it's time to set your boundaries. This process requires clarity and firmness. It is not enough to simply feel uncomfortable about a behavior or situation. You need to communicate your boundaries clearly and with conviction. This is often where people fall short because they fear being confrontational or coming across as harsh. But let me tell you this, you are not here to please people. You are here to live according to your purpose. If setting a boundary feels uncomfortable at first, remember that discomfort in the short term is far better than the long-term emotional toll of allowing your values to be trampled on. Setting boundaries isn't just about saying no when something doesn't feel right. It's also about saying yes to the things that align with your purpose and your peace. You're saying yes to your own well-being, to your peace of mind, to the relationships that honor your worth. When you make this commitment to yourself, you stop being a victim of emotional manipulation, and instead you take charge of your own life. This is particularly important when dealing with narcissists, who often rely on your emotional reactions to maintain control. They will push your boundaries, test your limits, and try to make you feel guilty for setting them. But when you stand firm in your convictions, they lose their power. Let's be clear, boundaries are not meant to isolate you from people. They are not meant to create division or separation. They are meant to protect your mental, emotional, and spiritual health. They teach others how to treat you, and they remind you that your needs are just as important as anyone else's. Setting boundaries is not about being rigid or inflexible. It's about being clear and consistent. It's about being intentional with the space you give others in your life and ensuring that space is only granted to those who respect and honor your boundaries. A powerful thing happens when you start to set and enforce boundaries. You build trust in yourself. You start to trust your intuition, trust your judgment, and trust your ability to maintain your peace. You no longer feel like you're at the mercy of others' whims or emotional games. And this trust in yourself leads to a deeper sense of confidence. When you are confident in who you are and what you stand for, you become impervious to the manipulation that narcissists and toxic individuals often try to use against you. At times, setting boundaries will require you to make difficult decisions. You may have to distance yourself from people who refuse to respect your limits. It may be painful, but remember this. No relationship, no matter how close, should ever come at the cost of your emotional and mental health. Sometimes this means walking away from a relationship that is not contributing to your growth, peace, or well-being. But this is not a loss, it is a liberation. It is the liberation that comes with protecting your heart and soul from people who do not have the maturity, respect, or capacity to honor your value. In conclusion, setting boundaries is an essential practice for safeguarding your life and purpose. Narcissists thrive on your lack of boundaries because they prey on your vulnerabilities. But when you know your worth and communicate your limits clearly, you are no longer a target. Boundaries allow you to protect your peace, your time, your energy, and your heart. The world may try to define you, but you define yourself through your values, and you protect yourself through the boundaries you set. So stand firm in who you are, and don't let anyone violate your personal space. You are worth the protection of your boundaries, and they will be your shield against any manipulative game. When we talk about detaching from manipulation, we are speaking about something that is both an art and a science. The truth is, many people get caught up in emotional games, not because they're weak or unintelligent, but because they simply don't know how to break free from the invisible chains that others place on them. Manipulative individuals, whether narcissists or others, rely on one thing to keep you hooked: your emotions. Your emotions are powerful indicators of what is happening within you and around you. They are not something to ignore, but they should never be the drivers of your life. Manipulators, especially narcissists, are experts at playing on your emotional weaknesses, your vulnerabilities, and your desires. They know how to trigger your guilt, your fear, your desire for approval, and your need for connection. And when they do, they've essentially gained control over you without you even realizing it. The first step in detaching from manipulation is understanding that your emotions are a part of your human experience, but not the totality of who you are. Your feelings can be guides, but they should never be your masters. In any relationship, be it romantic, familial, or professional, you must learn to respond with wisdom and intentionality rather than react impulsively to every emotional trigger. The narcissist's greatest weapon is your emotional reaction. They can say something hurtful and watch you crumble. They can play the victim and have you run to their side, all while they remain untouched by the weight of their own actions. If you are emotionally reactive, they will continue to use your responses to keep you hooked. They will feed off your guilt, your anger, your sadness, and your desperation. And in the process, they keep you trapped in a cycle of emotional dependency. You think you're fighting for connection, but you're only reinforcing their control. However, detachment does not mean becoming emotionally cold or distant. Detachment means you do not allow your emotions to dictate your decisions, especially in moments of emotional manipulation. You detach by becoming an observer of your feelings rather than being ruled by them. You recognize that your emotions are signals, indicators of what's happening internally, but you do not let them hijack your thinking, your actions, or your decisions. When a narcissist pulls you into an emotional game, the key is to take a step back. This moment of detachment allows you to shift your perspective. Rather than being swept away in a whirlwind of emotions, you can evaluate the situation objectively. You can ask yourself, what is really happening here? Am I being manipulated? Are my feelings being used to control me? What is this person trying to achieve by provoking this response? This is where emotional intelligence comes into play. Emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, and manage your emotions, as well as the emotions of others. When you develop this ability, you can create a space between feeling and action. You don't react in the heat of the moment, you respond after you have processed the situation calmly and thoughtfully. Narcissists thrive in chaotic, reactive environments, but they falter when they face someone who remains grounded and discerning. One of the most important aspects of detaching from manipulation is setting emotional boundaries. This involves recognizing when your emotions are being hijacked and actively choosing to protect your peace. Emotional boundaries are the invisible lines you draw in relationships to ensure that no one has the power to dictate how you feel. When you set these boundaries, you stop allowing others to control your emotions, and instead you control your emotional state. This is empowering. Setting emotional boundaries isn't easy, especially when you're dealing with people who know how to push your buttons. But it is crucial. You don't have to respond to every emotional trigger. You don't have to take everything personally. You don't have to feel guilty for setting boundaries that protect your mental health and emotional well-being. When you create these boundaries, you stop engaging in the cycle of emotional manipulation that narcissists are so skilled at creating. Another key to detaching from manipulation is practicing emotional self-regulation. Self-regulation involves maintaining control over your emotions and actions, even in the face of provocation. It's the ability to choose your response, even when you feel angry, upset, or hurt. This doesn't mean suppressing your emotions, but rather acknowledging them and choosing to act in a way that aligns with your values and your goals, rather than giving in to the emotional pressure being placed on you by the manipulator. When you learn to detach from manipulation, you also begin to reclaim your power. You stop giving away your emotional energy to people who don't have your best interests at heart. You stop allowing others to control your sense of self-worth. And ultimately, you stop being vulnerable to emotional exploitation. In the long run, detaching from manipulation is about recognizing your own worth and acting in accordance with your truth. It is about knowing that you don't need anyone's approval to feel complete, validated, or worthy. When you realize that your emotional state is yours to govern, you stop handing over your power to others. And in doing so, you become immune to their manipulative tactics. Ultimately, emotional detachment is about taking back control over your life, your choices, and your peace of mind. It's about breaking free from the chains that narcissists and manipulators try to bind you with. It's about choosing your emotional well-being over emotional chaos. And when you do this, the manipulative games of others no longer have any power over you. Narcissists are masters of disguise. They don't present themselves as the villains they often are. Instead, they appear as charming, captivating, and even charismatic individuals. At first glance, they seem to have all the qualities you desire: confidence, intelligence, and an ability to make you feel special. They know how to gain your attention, how to speak the right words, and how to make you feel like the most important person in the room. But charm by itself is not an indicator of true character. Narcissists rely heavily on the mask they wear. It's a mask that hides their true intentions. This mask allows them to slip into your life, to gain your trust, and to manipulate you from a place of hidden agendas. Their charisma is the bait. The moment they have you hooked, they begin playing the game. Recognizing the mask is not as easy as you might think. Narcissists are skilled at creating an illusion of authenticity. They often know exactly what you need and how to make you feel valued, at least in the beginning. Their ability to mirror your desires and emotions makes it easy for you to believe that they genuinely understand you. The problem is that at its core, this kind of behavior is not driven by genuine affection or empathy, but by the narcissist's need for control, admiration, and validation. But here's the catch: masks don't stay on forever. Sooner or later, the truth will emerge, not because the narcissist decides to reveal it, but because the mask can only hold up for so long. Their need to manipulate, to control, and to feed their ego will eventually break through the illusion they've worked so hard to create. You may start to notice inconsistencies in their behavior, sudden outbursts of anger when they don't get their way, or even passive-aggressive actions that are designed to keep you off balance. These cracks in their facade are the first signs that something is not right. They are the moments where the mask begins to slip and you get a glimpse of the real person underneath. The challenge lies in recognizing these signs before the narcissist can completely entangle you in their web. Narcissists thrive in environments where they are the center of attention, where they are admired and worshipped, but they are deeply insecure and fragile at their core. The moment their needs are not met, or the moment their sense of control is threatened, their true nature starts to show. They might become defensive, accusing you of things that aren't true, or twisting situations to make you question your own reality. These are all tactics designed to keep you off balance and doubting yourself. The real danger comes when you start ignoring these cracks, convincing yourself that maybe they're just having a bad day, or that it's not as bad as it seems. Narcissists rely on your denial. They know that if they can keep you in a state of confusion, doubt, or emotional dependency, they will maintain control. But when you understand that the charm is just a mask, when you see past the surface and into the motivations behind their actions, you can begin to protect yourself from the manipulation. Seeing through the mask requires you to be self-aware and emotionally intelligent. You have to learn to trust your instincts. Pay attention to the inconsistencies in their actions, not just the words they speak. Words are often designed to manipulate your emotions, but actions reveal the truth. If their actions don't align with their words, or if they're always putting their needs above yours, that's a red flag. The narcissist will not care about your emotional well-being unless it serves their agenda. This is why it's so important to observe behavior patterns over time. Charisma can win you over in a moment, but it takes time for someone's true character to be revealed. The longer you interact with them, the more their actions will expose who they really are. In relationships with narcissists, the key is not to be swept away by the initial allure of their charm. Recognize that this charm is often a tactic, a well-crafted performance designed to make you feel valued so that they can secure their place in your life. But as time goes on, you must be discerning. Pay attention to the emotional undercurrents. Are they gaslighting you? Do they attempt to make you feel guilty for things that aren't your fault? Do they make you question your own reality or attempt to isolate you from others? Understanding the mask for what it is, an illusion, empowers you to step back and evaluate the situation more clearly. It's easy to get caught up in the fantasy they create, but if you allow yourself to see the person for who they really are, the mask becomes irrelevant. You no longer see them as the charming figure who swept you off your feet. Instead, you see them for the manipulator they are, someone who needs to be in control, even at the cost of your well-being. The mask may still slip from time to time, but when you've learned to see through it, it no longer has the power to deceive you. You don't need to react to every charming gesture or seductive word. Your focus shifts from pleasing them to protecting your peace, maintaining your clarity, and guarding your heart. Once you recognize the mask for what it is, you can't be easily manipulated because you're no longer captivated by the illusion. Truth is the most powerful tool you have in your arsenal. In a world where manipulation, deceit, and dishonesty run rampant, truth has a unique ability to expose what lies in the dark and bring clarity to what is hidden. The beauty of truth is not just in its revelation, but in its integrity. It doesn't need to be defended or forced upon others. It simply needs to be spoken and lived. Narcissists, manipulators, and toxic individuals thrive in an environment where lies are tolerated and where deception can roam freely. When you walk in truth, you stop playing the game they've been trying to get you to play. The first thing you need to understand is that truth is a light. It doesn't fight to be seen, it simply shines. It's effortless. This is why manipulation thrives. It depends on the darkness, on people being ignorant of the facts or not willing to see the reality of a situation. Narcissists rely on false narratives to justify their actions. They spin webs of lies to control others and create a version of reality where they are always right, always justified, and always in control. But when you embrace the power of truth, you begin to see through these illusions. You begin to recognize the distortion of facts, the twisting of reality, and the empty promises that come with manipulation. Truth, however, is not always comfortable. It can be inconvenient, and it can challenge everything you thought you knew. But it is in those uncomfortable moments where the most growth happens. When you speak truth, you start to notice how certain people react, especially those who are used to living in the shadows. The narcissist, for example, will resist truth. They will dodge it, deflect it, and even attack it because truth undermines their power. It exposes their manipulation, their ego, and their false sense of superiority. Truth is a threat to everything they've built to hide their insecurities. But truth is also a protector. It shields you from deception. It grounds you in reality and keeps you from becoming entangled in the webs that narcissists and manipulators weave. Narcissists rely on creating confusion. They want you to doubt yourself, your reality, and even your own worth. They will distort facts, twist your words, and play with your emotions to create a world where they are the center and you are constantly orbiting around them, trying to please them, seeking validation from them. But when you are grounded in truth, you stop needing their validation. You start needing your own truth. This means being unapologetic about your truth, even when it's uncomfortable. When you speak truth, you don't need to shout it from the rooftops. You don't need to convince anyone of your perspective. You simply speak it. When you speak the truth, you don't have to argue. The truth doesn't need defending, it defends itself. And the more you live in alignment with that truth, the more clearly you will see through manipulation, lies, and false promises. Narcissists will attempt to use your truth against you. They will manipulate situations and twist your words to make you feel like you're the one in the wrong. But if you know your truth, if you are rooted in it, then no amount of gaslighting will have any effect on you. You will see the situation for what it truly is, and you will not be swayed by the false narratives they try to create. You will not be moved by their attempts to distort reality because your foundation is solid, and that foundation is truth. Moreover, truth sets boundaries. When you speak the truth, you are not only revealing your own values, but also setting the standard for how others should treat you. Narcissists and manipulators will often test boundaries, pushing and pulling to see how much they can get away with. But when you speak truth consistently, you create an invisible force field around you. You communicate that you will not tolerate disrespect, dishonesty, or manipulation. And because truth has its own authority, people will respect it, whether they agree with it or not. If they do not respect your truth, they will eventually leave your life, and that's a gift. You will not have to waste time trying to convince someone who is not ready to accept the reality of who you are. In your pursuit of truth, you must also remember that truth brings clarity. It clears away the fog and opens your eyes to what's really happening in your relationships and your life. It uncovers what's hidden, what's been suppressed, and what's been swept under the rug. The truth might initially be uncomfortable, but it is always liberating. It might force you to face things you didn't want to confront, but in the long run, it will free you from the chains of manipulation and emotional control. It will allow you to make decisions from a place of wisdom and understanding, not confusion or emotional reaction. The power of truth is not just in its ability to expose lies, but also in its capacity to heal. When you operate in truth, you create an environment where healing can take place. You don't have to walk around pretending everything is fine. You don't have to hide behind a mask or put up a facade. Truth gives you the freedom to be authentic, to be real, and to be whole. And in that space of authenticity, the narcissist's games no longer have power over you. Their manipulation, their lies, and their attempts to control you no longer work because you're no longer playing the game. You're standing in your own truth, and that truth is unshakable. In life, you were never created to be a mere spectator or a passive participant in the games of others. You were created with an extraordinary purpose. And that purpose is far greater than any relationship, approval, or attachment you could ever experience. Yet, so many people fall into the trap of looking for fulfillment through others, seeking validation, approval, and affirmation. This search often leads to dependency, where the desire for external validation becomes the driving force in their decisions, actions, and emotional responses. It's easy to think that being attached to someone or something will fill the emptiness, but this mindset ultimately leads to frustration, disappointment, and even manipulation. You must understand that your purpose is not found in another person, not in the approval of others, and not in external circumstances. Your purpose is embedded within you, designed by your Creator, and it stands independent of external validation. When you live according to the truth of your purpose, you realize that you are not a byproduct of someone else's approval or opinion. You are an individual with a divine calling, and no person, no situation, or no narcissist can take that from you. Purpose is what defines you. It is what guides you, shapes you, and compels you to live each day with meaning and intention. The moment you place your identity in the hands of others, you open the door to manipulation. Narcissists thrive on people who seek external approval because they know that if they can control the approval process, they can control the person. The need to please others or to be accepted by others becomes an unhealthy attachment that clouds your judgment and leaves you vulnerable to their games. You will find yourself giving away your energy, your time, and your peace in exchange for a fleeting sense of validation. But the truth is that validation is never enough. No matter how much you try to please others, it will never bring you the fulfillment you desire because you were never designed to live for others' approval. The key to breaking free from this dependency is choosing your purpose over attachment. You must decide once and for all that your peace and sense of worth are not contingent upon the opinions of others. You must choose your purpose, your destiny, over the temporary pleasures of approval. It is only when you realize that you are complete within yourself, that you are fulfilled by your connection to your higher calling, that you stop chasing approval and start living your life with clarity, confidence, and intention. When you choose purpose over attachment, you stop chasing validation from those who seek to manipulate you. Narcissists prey on those who are emotionally attached to their approval, who constantly seek to be loved or accepted. But when you choose purpose, your life becomes about fulfilling what you were meant to do, not about getting someone's emotional yes. Your focus shifts from pleasing others to living in alignment with your values and your mission. You stop measuring your worth by the applause you receive or the approval you get, and instead you measure your worth by your ability to walk in integrity, honor your values, and pursue your calling with unwavering commitment. It's important to understand that attachment doesn't just refer to romantic relationships or friendships. It extends to anything that has the power to sway your thoughts, decisions, and emotions in a way that distracts you from your purpose. Attachments can be to status, to possessions, to approval from peers, or to the expectations of society. These attachments may give the illusion of security and worth, but they will always fall short in bringing you true fulfillment. The more you attach your identity to these external factors, the more susceptible you become to manipulation. You give away your power, and in doing so, you allow others to dictate your happiness and your emotional state. Choosing purpose over attachment is an act of self-empowerment. It means that you take back control over your life and refuse to be manipulated or defined by anyone or anything outside of yourself. You stop letting others pull your strings. When you're driven by purpose, you are guided by a deeper sense of fulfillment, something that no one can take from you. You are free from the constant need to seek approval or attention because you understand that the validation you need comes from within. Your purpose is your foundation, and when your foundation is secure, nothing, no person, no narcissist, no external force can shake you. When you choose purpose over attachment, you are able to let go of toxic relationships and unhealthy dynamics. You no longer feel the need to hold on to something or someone simply for the sake of attachment. Your worth is no longer tied to someone's opinion or to the approval you get from others. You can walk away from situations that are draining, manipulative, or unfulfilling because you know that your true fulfillment comes from within and from your alignment with your divine purpose. Living with purpose also means recognizing that not all attachments are healthy, and it's important to prioritize relationships that align with your values and your destiny. When your focus is on your purpose, you naturally begin to surround yourself with people who support, uplift, and inspire you to be your best. Narcissists and manipulators can no longer thrive in your life because their games no longer affect you. You've chosen a higher calling, and that purpose is too great to allow anyone to undermine it. In conclusion, living for purpose rather than attachment is the key to breaking free from toxic manipulative dynamics. It's the key to living a life of freedom, fulfillment, and strength. When you align your actions with your purpose, you no longer seek the approval of others, and the games that narcissists play simply cannot affect you. You are free to live the life you were always meant to live, a life of purpose, passion, and power.